So David Pakman attacks HA Goodman, another lefty hitting a lefty. This story is aggravating to me. It's immensely aggravating. He comes out with a hit video, a smear video, lies the entire video, literally lies the entire video. I'm going to put a link to the video itself so you can see it. He brings up HA Goodman, and he makes this case that HA Goodman is dwelling in conspiracy theories. Now, he's being pretty vague in the conspiracy theories, essentially just saying, or conflating this idea of Seth Rich being the leaker and some element of the Democratic Party having Seth Rich killed. The problem is, HA Goodman never made that argument. That's the problem. This entire video is him essentially talking about this particular conspiracy theory and him essentially making this case that everyone has a dog in the hunt. I've made that argument myself. So I agree with him up to that point of, yes, each particular faction in this particular country has a position in this. That's true. And for you to say, yes, he was killed in an area that had a high murder rate. Okay, that's also true. What does that have to do with Seth Rich not being the leaker? Meaning, all those things can be true and Seth Rich can still be the leaker. And why does Pakman full on know that he wasn't? My issue with the video, yes, he's calling conspiracy theories, which is making it pejorative, which is fucking annoying, because there's no way for him to know that. That's dishonest on his face. When I've talked about the Russia thing, I've always made this case of, yeah, it's possible, but I don't believe it, because there's no smoking gun linking Trump to Russia. Until that smoking gun is surfaced, yeah, I don't believe it. But you understand there's a level of doubt built into that. It's almost a recognition of, well, yeah, there's no way for me to know this. I can believe this based on what I'm seeing around me, or based on lack of what I'm seeing around me. In this particular case, he's looking at Seth Rich and saying, that's a complete conspiracy theory. There's no evidence. He completely discounts Julian Assange's evidence. Julian Assange is the one person out of the 7 billion people on this planet who would know who sent him the information. If Julian Assange is saying it's not Russia, and he is setting himself on fire in that interview, getting across that it was Seth, I'm going to believe Assange. He completely discounts Julian Assange as evidence. He's, oh, Julian Assange, yeah, that's not evidence. He just wants to distance himself from Russia. Why do you believe that? Why do you believe that? You're creating a theory of the case. And based on your theory of the case, you're using your theory of the case to essentially ignore actual evidence. You've arrived at a conclusion that you've wanted to arrive at, not because the evidence pushed you to that conclusion, but because you've wanted to be at that particular conclusion. There's a difference in those things. Look, each side does have a dog in this hunt, so don't misunderstand me. You have Democrats who, for the most part, are living off this Russian narrative. They don't want to talk about why 15 million people left the party. They don't want to talk about cheating Sanders in the primaries. They don't want to talk about being empty and shirking their responsibilities to the poor and the middle class. Those aren't conversations the Democratic Party wants to have. 24 hours after Hillary Clinton lost that election, people were calling her, hey, we're really sorry you lost the reality show host. We're really sorry about that. That had to hurt. That had to burn. That really had to burn. So Hillary Clinton didn't want to face the public dealing with the fact that she lost a reality show host. And that reality show host is now the president of the United States. She came out and said, I didn't lose. Russia hacked me. That's what it was. And they pushed this narrative out 24 hours after the election. Now, I don't know if Blandest Pakman is aware of the book called Shattered, but I can send him a copy if he like, where he can see that this Russian narrative was concocted by Hillary Clinton after losing that election. Is he unaware of this? Is he unaware of this? Does that count as evidence to somebody manufacturing a story to tar the other guy? In the sense of Democrats, or in the sense of small d Democrats, those people also don't want to deal with the issues that's wrong with their party. Every so often, I would bump into one of those robots. Those people are ridiculous. Jill Stein, Comey, Russia, it's everybody else except the party itself. It's everybody else's fault except Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party. They don't want to come to this conclusion of, wow, our party really is bankrupt. We lost 900 legislative seats. Do you really believe that you guys lost that many seats because of Russia? You honestly believe that you lost every level of government, federal, state, and local governments all throughout the United States? You believe Russia was responsible for that? It wasn't the emptiness of your party. It wasn't the fecklessness of your party. It wasn't that your party couldn't get anything accomplished. It wasn't that your party couldn't stand for anything. It wasn't even that your party couldn't even articulate the values of the party. Nope, that's not it. Russia. It was Russia. This is amazing. This is what the Democrats are basing it on. Progressives are taking the standpoint of, no, you just lost. You just lost. It wasn't Russia. It wasn't Comey. It wasn't Jamal Thomas. It wasn't Jimmy Dore. It wasn't Jill Stein. It wasn't the Green Party. It wasn't Libertarians. You just lost. You had the most hated candidate in the history of candidates, with the exception of Donald Trump. You had the most untrusted candidate in the history of candidates. Beyond that, you had somebody who was under FBI investigation for like a year. This is amazing to me that you look at this person and like, it had to be Russia. I don't understand how she lost. The public wanted something different. That's what it boiled down to. You had a bunch of people who voted for Obama who turned around and voted for Trump. He failed, and those people picked another pony that was talking about change. That's the reality of the situation. She just lost. Now, that's my position. That's a progressive position. We don't want to hear about this other shit, because ultimately, if you're trying to say Russia, then you're trying to say that we are wrong. That's what's going on. Like, so understand the personality dynamics that's going on. Progressives are making this point of, you cheated our guy and you lost. We told you were going to lose. You put up a corporate shield when the public wanted a progressive. You lost. Stop blaming everybody else. You lost. Now, you can understand that if they're bringing out this narrative that it was Russia, that's essentially saying progressives are wrong on this point. That no, it wasn't anything wrong with the party. That ultimately, Hillary Clinton was just fucking awesome. It was Russia. Everybody has a dog in the hunt. Of course, Republicans are just going to pile on because they're just against the Democratic Party. The media also has a dog in this hunt. They're not neutral in this case. When Hillary Clinton projected the story about Russia narrative, they went to the media. They did a media blitz. They've been playing this story nonstop for 6 months, one innuendo after another, without ever finding a smoking gun between Trump and Russia, or finding a smoking gun that Russia actually hacked this election. I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know what he's talking about. The sad part about this is, because media has been pushing the story for this many months, do you honestly believe that media is going to come on one day and says, you know what? We were completely lying. We didn't know that. Of course not. They're going to propagate that narrative. They're not going to turn around and say, okay, we were liars. The Democratic Party is not going to turn around and say, okay, you got us. We were liars. We just made that shit up just because we needed to obfuscate the problems associated with our party. They're never going to say that. What they will say is continue to say Russia at the top of their lungs. What they don't have is a smoking gun. In one case after another, these guys have been backing up on this narrative. David Pakman, however, is a full-on believer. And he believes it so fervently that he's willing to say that there is no way possible that Seth was the leaker. So he believes that the guy who worked for the DNC, but let me put it this way. He believes that it's more likely that Russian hackers danced and jumped into one system after another, but were somewhat sloppy, so they left information. The DNC doesn't give their servers to the FBI. No, they gives it to CrowdStrike, somebody who they're paying. CrowdStrike comes up with somewhat discredited information. Now, based on this discredited information, the FBI and NSA kind of look at that information and make an assessment. But they're not certain that it was Russia. And with the CIA hacking tools being out, anybody could have hacked that particular system. I'm making the point that the signature that was left could be mimicked, meaning the evidence that they believe they have is not even tangible evidence. That's not a clear fingerprint of sorts. And again, smoking gun Julian Assange is saying it wasn't Russia and is insinuating that it was Seth Rich over and over and over again. What is Pakman talking about? Pakman, in this particular video, completely discounts Assange as evidence. He takes him off the table. Oh, Assange just wants to distance himself from Russia. You're trying to fulfill your theory of the case. You just don't want to deal with the evidence that's presented to you. That's what it boils down to. The problem with this video, I mean, there's a few problems with the video, but the main problem, or my main issue with this video is he's showing a picture of HA Goodman. And in showing a picture of HA Goodman, he doesn't quote him. He doesn't give any information on the video that he's talking about. He just casts this dispersion and casts this smearing tactic of saying that HA Goodman is peddling the conspiracy theory that Hillary Clinton had the guy murdered because he was a leak. That's not what took place. That wasn't what was in the video that he was talking about. That panel interview that he was talking about, HA Goodman did not make that argument. The argument that I've made, that HA Goodman have made, that Tim Black have made, that most of the people have made who've been talking about this story, is not that he was murdered by anybody. All of this information about him being in a rough neighborhood and everything else, that's fine. He could have been murdered just by happenstance. That has nothing to do with whether or not he was the leak. That's what I'm getting at. He's conflating these two things, the entire story. He's acting as if these two things are tethered together. Those things are not connected together. Yes, he could be the leak, and yes, he could have gotten killed, and yes, he could have gotten killed that was completely separate and distinct from anything to do with leaking that information. Those things are disconnected from one another. You may have some people who are making that connection. HA Goodman was not one of those people. And this video gives the impression that HA Goodman was making an argument saying that there was a link between Seth Rich and Hillary Clinton, and that Hillary Clinton or the Democratic Party in some way had the man murdered. You would never find that anywhere. He didn't add a link. He didn't add a video. He didn't add a clip. He added no evidence whatsoever to back up the fact of what he was saying. He smeared the guy, just using his own words, just smearing the guy, without ever really giving the guy a chance so you can hear for yourself. So I'm going to put the video in so you can actually see the conversation that he's talking about. This video is full of it. It's 9 minutes and 21 seconds of bullshit. I'm showing his video also. He's lying through his teeth in this video. He is absolutely lying through his teeth. HA Goodman didn't make that argument. The argument that was being made was very specific to Seth Rich being the leaker, not to this other stuff. Bringing these two things together and conflating these two is allowing him to make this case of, oh, this is just a conspiracy theory. But it's a straw man. He's making an argument that nobody is making. And he's attributing that argument to HA Goodman. There are things that you can poke fun at HA Goodman about, or things you can argue with him about. You can say that he was being overly aggressive on the Hillary Clinton thing. You can have that argument. He would say that I was just giving you my opinion, but fair enough. You can say he was being overly aggressive. But in this particular case, he's just giving you his theory of the case. I'd argue that you have no higher ground in regards to your idea of what took place with regards to this Russian nonsense. Or with his case of, well, I believe Seth Rich was a leak. How is your case more valid than his? And no, you've listed no information. Literally, this is just you talking. This is just you talking. If you're going to smear somebody, you should at least show what the person said to show evidence of the fact that your smearing is necessary, or your smearing is, I guess, adequate or worth it. I've seen the video. It's not. David Pakman in this video is a picture of a liar. He's lying through his teeth. He's being massively disingenuous in his characterization of HA Goodman, at least in the context of this very specific story with regards to Seth Rich. HA Goodman's arguments have been perfectly valid. If you notice, he didn't attack any of HA Goodman's arguments. He didn't even bring them up. He didn't even bring up any HA Goodman quotes. All of this was him just talking out of his ass about something that never existed, but an argument that never took place. Nobody has the position, or at the very least, nobody that he's talking about has taken the position that anybody in the DNC had Seth Rich murdered. The position is only that Seth Rich was the leaker. This is, look, I haven't watched a lot of Pakman's stuff. Few and far between. I never really got into his content. But this is gross. This is gross. This is an outright smear job. This is just an outright smear job. This is an outright smear job. He's essentially attacking HA Goodman. and is not doing so earnestly or fairly. And even if you believe in the Russian narrative, don't you have to believe in that Russian narrative with a certain level of awareness that you could be wrong? Like, if you have any level of awareness that, okay, there's no way for me to know this, I believe this, meaning I'm erring on the side of a particular position. If you're erring on the side of a position, how are you turning around and saying the other position is completely a conspiracy theory? How do you know? How do you know? Who has whispered in David Pakman's ear to tell him that Russia was indeed, in fact, from a flesh-to-bone level, the person who did the hacking? I would wager nobody. He's pulling this out of his ass. In the same way that he's attacking and smearing HA Goodman for something that HA Goodman never said, he's massively getting across the story in a way that is very little context. He's giving you the basics of the information. Don't get me wrong. The main problem with the story, though, is he has a certain theory of the case, but he's not giving you the strongest argument against his theory of the case. And he's completely conflating this idea of the murder and the WikiLeaks thing as if those things are completely related. Nobody's making that tether. He's pretending as if the tether is being made. It's not. It's not. It's disingenuous at best. Lying at worst. So, all right, guys. I saw this and it bugged the shit out of me. It's one thing. I'm not against people attacking lefties. And look, to some degree, Trump fell into this. You've heard me make this case that African Americans, for the most part, went to the Democratic Party during the Civil Rights Movement after the Voting Rights Act and everything else. Racist whites left the Democratic Party and went to the Republican Party. You have a dichotomy in the country of multicultural Democratic Party and a mostly white Republican Party. Republicans use this as political leverage. They exploit that particular thing. They exploit the cultural heritage of the people who are in their particular party and exploit the fact that you have the other in the Democratic Party. So they could say, hey, you see those people over there? Those people are trying to take your money. They want to raise your taxes and give those people services. Those people that are in their party, they're trying to do this for them. You don't want them to raise your taxes, do you? Now, Republicans are making this argument purely for their plutocrats who are paying them to make this argument. These hapless saps, for the most part, are being had based on their own reality box, their own cultural heritage of sorts. Democrats are somewhat doing the same thing to Trump. Trump comes in and says he wants to be conciliatory to Russia. That's great. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Democrats tar him with that, saying, okay, if you're going to be conciliatory to Russia, you're not just conciliatory, you're being manipulated by Russia. You're Putin's puppet. You're essentially working at the behest of Trump. You're a Russian agent. This is what the narrative kicked in. This is the hook that they used in order to make this case. But understand, this case was crafted 24 hours after Hillary Clinton lost that election. That's what I'm getting at. This wasn't something that just organically materialized. This was something they dredged up. Democrats have just as many connections to Russia as Trump. I don't understand how Trump connections are all of a sudden some indication of guilt, but Democratic connections are just fucking awesome. It's amazing to me. I don't like Donald Trump, so it always annoys me when I have to kind of defend him on this point. There's no evidence, or at the very least, there's no strong, tangible evidence to make that link between those two things. And again, I'm making this point that he's conflating this. I know I'm repeating myself, but I want to nail this down. This entire argument that he's making is a conflation of Seth Rich being the leaker and Seth Rich getting killed. I'm making the point that this video is massively disingenuous because that is not exactly the argument that anybody is making. And the fact that he's showing HA Goodman's face in the beginning, he goes through this long spill about what took place or the elements of the case, and then alludes to HA Goodman was defending these conspiracy theories on Russia Today. But no, I'm not going to show you that show. And no, I'm not going to give you any quotes or any links to show you the information to back up anything that I'm saying based on that particular panel. Yeah, this is absurd. This is sad and pathetic. If this is indicative of his work, oh man, this is gross. This is absolutely gross. Lefties, man. You got to stop attacking other lefties. You just, I mean, look, all of this stuff is coming from the election. I'm going to end this because this is going long. All of this stuff, though, is coming from the election itself. These are just waves that are emanating from what took place in the primaries and what took place in the election. Progressives were pissed. So yes, progressives were going to take a particular position based on them being pissed. I've gone over their position. Democrats were terrified and shattered, like the book said, after the loss. All of these people were taking certain positions based upon what took place in the election and the primaries and the feelings that were stirred in that situation, including situations with the left. If Pakman leans more towards the Democrat side, then yes, he's going to be in that bubble and he's going to believe this garbage about Russia. Whatever. I didn't realize he was in that camp, but whatever, he's in that camp. But you can make that argument in an honest way. I would make the case that this is not an honest way. This is gross. This is gross. I'm going to need a shower after watching this video. If you're going to smear somebody, you should at least show the person that you're smearing and show what they're doing to create an identifier on what you're smearing. In the same way that I'm showing your video now and I'm saying this video is bullshit, then people can actually look at this video and see that this video is bullshit and compare it against the other video to show you don't know what the hell you're talking about. That's what it boils down to. Alright guys, if you enjoyed the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the work through Patreon.